Hidden deep in the desolate plains of Florence, Colorado, surrounded by miles of dust and silence, stands a fortress unlike any other. Its walls rise out of the sand like a scar, crowned with razor wire and guarded by watchtowers that never blink. To most of the world, it's known simply as ADX Florence. But to those who've seen the inside, it has another name: the prison that breaks men. Built in 1994, ADX Florence was designed for one purpose: to contain the most dangerous, the most violent, and the most uncontainable prisoners in the United States. It is the final stop for men who have murdered inside other prisons, terrorists who have attacked nations, and crime lords whose names once echoed through city streets. Here, in this sterile tomb of steel and concrete, time doesn't pass. It rots. Every journey into ADX begins the same way. The heavy metal door slams behind you, and suddenly the world outside is gone. You are escorted through narrow corridors that seem to close in with each step until you arrive at your new home, a 7 by 12-foot concrete box. The walls are unpainted and cold to the touch. A solid steel door seals you in, with only a small slit for a food tray and another for a pair of cuffed hands. There are no bars, no glimpses of the outside world, only grey. Endless, suffocating grey. Inside that tiny space sits a concrete bed with a thin mattress, a steel sink-toilet combination, and a small bulletproof window set at such an angle that you can see nothing but the sky. For 23 hours a day, this is where a man lives, eats, sleeps, dreams, and deteriorates. The only sound is the echo of your own breathing, the occasional shuffle of boots in the hallway, and the low hum of fluorescent lights that never turn off. Even exercise, the only reprieve from confinement, offers no relief. Once a day the cell door opens, and you are led, shackled in, to what the inmates call the cage. It is a small concrete pen with high walls and a mesh ceiling that allows a sliver of sunlight to slip through. There are no weights, no grass, no other prisoners, only concrete, sky, and silence. For 1 hour, you can walk, stretch, or simply stare upward, before being led back to the box you now call home. They say this place was built for control, but what it truly manufactures is madness. The names that echo through its corridors read like a gallery of infamy. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber who waged war on modern technology. Ramzi Youssef, mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Zacarias Moussaoui, the so-called 20th hijacker of 9/11. And Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the Mexican drug lord who escaped 2 high-security prisons before being brought here, where no one escapes. Every hallway, every cell, every inch of this facility is designed to crush defiance. There is no shouting here, no rebellion, only obedience. Cameras capture every movement. Sensors detect every heartbeat. Guards patrol like shadows, trained to speak little and feel nothing. They do not make friends. They maintain order. In ADX Florence, even mercy feels like a security risk. Meals arrive through the slot in the door. Small, portioned, tasteless. Books and letters, when approved, come through bulletproof glass. Family visits are not face-to-face, but through video screens miles apart. The concept of touch, of human warmth, ceases to exist. Inmates are stripped not only of freedom, but of identity. Their reflection fades. Their voice weakens. Some begin to talk to themselves. Some scream at the walls for hours, hoping to hear an answer. Others sit in complete silence for days, staring into the concrete, until even their thoughts begin to echo. A former warden once described ADX Florence as cleaner than any hospital and quieter than any church. But beneath that cleanliness lies a terrible truth. The silence is not peace, it's despair. Here, sanity is fragile. Prison psychologists have recorded cases of self-mutilation, hunger strikes, and psychosis. Men tear at their own skin or beg to be transferred to death row, not because they want to die, but because death at least brings an ending. The architecture itself is psychological warfare. Every corner, every locked door, every sealed cell is calculated to remind you that escape, even in thought, is impossible. Days blur into weeks, weeks dissolve into years, until the very concept of time loses meaning. A man may wake up one morning and realize he cannot recall the sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight, or the face of anyone he loves. Inside ADX Florence, punishment isn't measured in years. It's measured in echoes. The echoes of your own voice coming back from the walls, reminding you that you are still here, still breathing, still forgotten. And yet, through all of this, there is one haunting question that lingers in the air. How long can the human mind survive without touch, without sound, without hope? No one truly knows. Some endure, clinging to fragments of faith or memory. Others collapse into the shadows of themselves, lost forever in the silence that surrounds them. ADX Florence is more than a prison. It's an experiment in isolation, a monument to the power of control and the fragility of the human spirit. And as the doors close and another day fades into the same endless grey, one truth becomes painfully clear. Here, men do not simply serve time. They become it. Inside the silent concrete chambers of ADX Florence, time becomes a liquid thing, thick, slow, and endless. Hours stretch until they lose meaning, swallowed by the monotonous hum of isolation. The men inside these walls have been stripped of everything, their freedom, their power, their names. But the most devastating loss comes later, when the prison begins to strip away their minds. At first, many arrive defiant. Some are killers, others terrorists or gang leaders, men used to commanding fear, not feeling it. They promise themselves they will not break. They tell themselves they are too strong, too hardened, too disciplined to surrender. But ADX is patient. It doesn't break men with violence. It breaks them with silence. The silence in ADX Florence isn't absence. It's a presence, a living thing that wraps around you, whispering doubts in your ear. Days pass without hearing another human voice. Meals arrive soundlessly. Footsteps echo in the corridor and fade. There are no conversations, no laughter, not even the faint murmur of another life nearby. Just the low, mechanical throb of ventilation fans and the heartbeat in your own head. Psychologists call it sensory deprivation. In small doses, it numbs the mind. In large doses, it destroys it. Within weeks, prisoners begin to hallucinate. Shadows on the wall take shape. Voices emerge from the hum of the air vents. The human brain, desperate for stimulation, starts creating its own reality, one made of whispers, flickers, and ghosts. Some men start talking to insects they find in their cells. Others invent companions, giving them names and stories. The lucky ones still recognize that their minds are slipping. The unlucky ones no longer can. There was once a man named Thomas Silverstein, one of the most feared inmates in American prison history. He spent over 36 years in solitary confinement, much of it at ADX Florence. He once described his existence as living in a space no bigger than a bathroom, where the only thing that changes is the number of scratches on the wall. He called it a slow-motion version of hell, and he was not exaggerating. In 2015, another inmate, John Geoghegan, a former priest convicted of child abuse, was killed by another prisoner, despite the fortress-like security, proving that even in the most controlled place on earth, violence still finds a way. Others, denied even the relief of confrontation, turn that violence inward. Some swallow razor blades, others bash their heads against the wall, desperate to feel something real, to remind themselves that they still exist. The United Nations has called solitary confinement for more than 15 days a form of torture. At ADX Florence, 15 days is nothing. Many spend 15 years or more in near total isolation. The human brain was never meant to live without social contact. Without faces, voices, or human touch, neurons begin to fire differently. Anxiety becomes paranoia. Paranoia becomes delusion. And delusion becomes despair. Prisoners have described hearing their own heartbeat as thunder. Some claim to see lights flashing in the corners or spiders crawling across the ceiling that aren't really there. Letters to family go unanswered or never reach them at all. One inmate wrote, "It's like being buried alive, except you keep waking up." The guards who work there, too, are not untouched. They move through the corridors like shadows, speaking in low tones, trained never to engage emotionally. Many suffer nightmares, depression, and moral fatigue. Some quit after a few months. One former guard admitted, "It's not the danger that gets you. It's the silence. It starts to follow you home." Even the architects of ADX Florence couldn't have imagined the psychological toll their creation would take. The facility was designed to keep men safe from each other, and society safe from them. But what if, in doing so, it created something even more dangerous? A machine that consumes the human soul in the name of order. Yet, amid the despair, there are flickers of humanity. Some prisoners find escape in books, devouring pages like oxygen. Others learn to meditate, focusing on breathing to keep from drowning in their thoughts. A few even write poetry, their verses smuggled out through lawyers or family. One inmate wrote, "My world is grey, my eyes are tired. My hands touch nothing, yet I'm wired. If freedom lives beyond this wall, then tell it I remember. That's all." Those small acts of defiance, reading, writing, remembering, become weapons against oblivion. Because at ADX Florence, the greatest rebellion isn't violence, it's endurance. Still, questions linger far beyond its walls. Does such a place truly make society safer, or does it simply bury the problem where no one can see it? What does justice mean when punishment becomes indistinguishable from psychological death? And at what point does confinement cross the line into cruelty? ADX. Florence stands as a monument to both human ingenuity and human darkness, a structure so secure that no one has ever escaped, and so inescapable that even thoughts can feel trapped. For the men inside, there is no parole, no hope of redemption. They exist in a space between life and death, where every breath is a reminder that they are still here, yet no longer human. The walls hold their bodies. The silence holds their minds. And over time, the two become one. So when the sun sets over the Colorado desert, casting long shadows across that silent fortress, one can't help but wonder, what does freedom mean, if this is its price? ADX. Florence may keep the world safe from its monsters, but in doing so, it might just create new ones, hidden behind the same grey walls that were meant to contain them. Because in the end, no one truly leaves the prison that breaks men, not even those who survive it.